What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another weekly update. And last week we had quite the week. We had a lot of good strength in the markets, leading up essentially, even going into Tesla earnings. Tesla had awesome earnings. Netflix had a great earnings. And then you had Snap. Now, Snap has kind of thrown a wrench in everything to this point. Everything, well, you can blame it on Snap, but ultimately, Apple put those restrictions on essentially allowing the user to determine if they want their data tracked. And so that has really messed up Snap's earnings as far as how they run their ads. Also being said, we have the issue of supply and understanding that a lot of companies aren't advertising as much because of the fact that they don't have the supply. So why advertise? So you got two different issues. Now you got the ad space, which is going to be a big issue coming into this week because this week we have some of the biggest earnings as far as big tech goes. You got Facebook on Monday. You got Apple. You got Apple on Thursday. We got Google and Twitter on Tuesday. I mean, it's a week full. We got Starbucks, Caterpillar, Boeing this week. What else we got? We got 3M this week. We got AbbVie this week. I mean, there is a lot of big earnings this week. ServiceNow is this week as well. Ford, GM. So it's a huge week this week. Ultimately, when it comes to big tech, we are getting started off with Facebook. And considering what happened with Snap, Facebook will be a big gauge. Only because that it relies solely on Apple or Android. So that particular Facebook could be one of the ones that get hit really bad, just like Snap. Now, it did take a big dive. It tried to dive even today. I'm recording this on a Friday, so it did try to dive even today. But then you got someone else like Google, which is not so dependent upon Apple, and so it has dived, but not as bad. But then you got something like Twitter, which has dived just as bad. So really, we want to see what else is going on. We also have Amazon and Shop on the 28th, which is Thursday, which will determine how sales are ultimately doing as well. So this is going to be the make it or break it week. A lot of stuff, a lot of major FANG stocks actually took a major hit this week or after that dive yesterday, but we tried to sell off today and it just did not happen. I don't know if it's just the momentum of earnings and everybody's hyped about the earnings, but this is a huge issue. I mean, we've talked about supply issues before and them essentially saying that people need to be buying gifts ahead of time for Christmas because of supply shortage. But being said, the market is still strong. The market still seems to think that everything is going to be okay at this point. And I think last night was kind of, or Thursday with Snap was kind of that aha moment, essentially saying that, yeah, right, that even advertisement is getting hit by inflation, by the pandemic, by supply issues, in that they're even seeing major cuts, which is something I didn't think would happen in the pandemic. So being said, it is affecting everything. And so we're going to see that ultimately when we start seeing e-commerce come up to bat and seeing what they're bringing brought to the table. Now this week, yes, we do have the usual data stuff. There's nothing else I'm really seeing on the Federal Reserve side that is going to make a big dramatic impact. Again, I think on the 15th of November, we'll get that FOMC meeting. We'll get Powell and all that. I do believe there is a Powell. I do believe Powell has a talk this week as well. May get a little bit of Powell. We got a little bit of Powell today, essentially just reiterating a lot of the same stuff he's been saying to this point. So what are we ultimately looking for? We got a big week of earnings. Again, it's definitely going to see the market really doesn't care about earnings. We're getting random stock pumps like your DWAC this Trump SPAC, essentially about his social network and everything, which has gone absolutely absurd. And then I know later, even in today on Friday, as this recording, there was other different SPACs that essentially were led by the same. I think he was a CEO or something of this SPAC, and it ran. I think Beep or something like that was the other one. There was another one that it just started running ridiculous amounts because of this. As you can tell, there was nothing really going on in the market today. Tesla really tried to rip, but it just didn't have it today. All the money got sucked into these SPACs. But everything else, Big Fang, like I said, most of Big Fang got hit and then just kind of just stayed down for most of the day. And in waiting, I think right now we're going to see a lot of waiting until what happens with Facebook, ultimately Google, Apple. I think the biggest one will probably be Google, and see how that one turns out, because I know Google is one of the major leaders as well as far as that space, and seeing how much of an impact it's really hurt to Google would be another gauge. As you can see, Tesla is done dramatically well. Tesla did dramatically well on their earnings. We finally saw that leg up yesterday on open, then was just flat, and then today was just flat. I don't really know. I mean, Tesla's got so much going for it, but it has its own ecosystem. And so that is what is helping Tesla. A lot of these companies don't have their own ecosystem. Amazon does have a great environment in which they build a lot of their own stuff. And so that's really helped them. So they might make out, but where does that leave Shop and Etsy and all those other ones that may be dealing with delivery time and stuff like that? I haven't heard anything about that per se, but we have to see how that works. So being said, again, if we go back to SPX, again, we've ran straight up since. Yes, this is the pre-earnings run up, and it's gone very strong, but now it's flattening out. Now I think we're just waiting on actual earnings this week to see what happens to determine if we go higher. And I think we just barely, I don't even know if we got all-time highs today. Yeah, we did get all-time highs on SPX, but we barely tagged it, and then we wanted to drop from that point. And so, as you can see, the daily support is still way down here at the 44.52 mark. As far as the EMA goes, not saying it has to come down that far, because normally when we catch momentum, it doesn't typically come down that far. And even if you look at the Fibonacci retracements, I mean, even a 38% pullback is a 44.71. Sorry if you can't see that very well. I know TOS isn't the greatest charting system in the world, but I like to keep all my charts on here because it just makes it easier for when I'm actually trading. But nonetheless, I want to see what this has in store. Again, we haven't had much of a pullback since essentially this past week, just straight running, which is good. It's been a phenomenal week. And then Friday was just, again, flat. So, again, waiting to see what happens. Bitcoin, again, it had that flash crash yesterday, Thursday. And then today, just not the same either. Today just sold off even more. It's retesting. I'm not really worried about it. I think it's we got to do some retesting on the daily here. Essentially down. You can even hit down to this 59 mark, 58 mark. Essentially, roughly around that 59 mark. I think we should be perfectly fine. Again, it's done nothing but it completely took off, to be honest here. And so this 20 EMA support, maybe that's what it's waiting for, and to catch it at that 58 mark and start pushing it back up. But I think Bitcoin is still strong and healthy. Another ETF came out today as well. The BTF cryptocurrency came out again today. If you're looking for an ETF, Bitcoin ETF, plus the BITO that came out earlier this week. And so you got two new ETFs now, essentially for Bitcoin. So you do have those, which came out this week. So there was a lot that's been going on this week. And again, going to some of these other ones as far as FANG and everything. Apple, again, Apple's been holding really well. Even with all that nonsense that's been going on today, it's playing this range. even after essentially the cutback in production numbers, it's still holding well. Is it going to blast off like it did last earnings? I don't know. It really has to knock it out of the park. I think it's going to play this range, essentially from this 147 to this 150 mark until it gets to earnings and determine where it's going to land from that point. And no, that's not till Thursday. So Thursday is going to be a huge day this week. I mean, that's where you got most of your weight in your Apple's, Shopify, and Amazon all in one day. But we will start out. We'll start out with some fire with Facebook and Google in the beginning of the week. Again, Facebook took a massive hit. It's been hovering back around that 200. It'd be interesting to see if this does do bad. It's already taken that hit, so I don't know really how much further it's going to go down. Maybe it'll come back down and retest the 315. I don't know. Maybe they have a great earnings and it recuperates all that quickly. But we have to see on Facebook. But the good thing is we'll get a quick answer on this one come Monday. Google, again, it took that hit Thursday night, a little bit this morning, but it's still holding essentially roughly around this 27.32 mark really well. Again, I don't know how much more it will get hit because of the fact it's built out its ecosystem for the most part. It has a lot of other different things too that help it too. So even though ad revenue is a big aspect of it, I think a lot of their YouTube channel essentially you can get on essentially anything that's not mobile as well. So I know a lot of people watch YouTube on TV and everything. So I don't know how much is really going to impact it. So we'll definitely have to see how Google does. Square, I really like Square, and they still got, I think, 2 more weeks before they report. Yeah, they don't report till the 4th of November, so still got some while on this. If this does dip down enough, if for some reason we get back down to the 235 mark, which I think the market as a whole really has to take a hit, but if we do, I definitely want to buy it back at that point. They did leak earnings a week early, so that's something to keep in mind. I think they've done that twice already, so it'll be interesting to see for some reason they leak earnings this week or even in the weekend, because I think the last earnings they leaked it on a Sunday is what ended up happening. But Square is definitely one I want to keep on watch. Roblox has been an absolute beast through all this. I believe they got some news, this Apple news here on Thursday is what this pop was, but definitely want to check the retest, especially when the market does poorly. Roblox seems to do very well. And so moving forward, it could be a good one to keep on watch. Snap, I'm really not touching Snap until it starts really basing, finding a bottom. Maybe with some of these other companies, they start selling. Snap might start selling more. It's not until it starts basing where I'm looking at Snap. Planter, through all this, has done extremely well, holding very well. I really like it back down to 200 if we could, around that 23 mark. Roughly around somewhere in that range would be fantastic if we can get back into that zone. UPST, I like this one. I've been trying to gauge this one. What I really want to do is wait. I did swing this overnight and catch this move. I thought it would bounce back, but with everything that went on with the market and then Snap, it just sold off. So waiting for this to base. Maybe we get back down to the 289 mark, which would be fantastic. Something I want to swing till the end of the year as long as everything plays out. Affirm, still really high, but holding well. Again, I want to see how all the rest of the earnings play out and where this starts to go. Is it going to essentially play this range that it's going to right now, the 158 to the 148 mark, which is a big range actually, but I want to see how that does. Again, we got Amazon on Thursday. Getting back to that 200, it's just going to hover this 200 until earnings. I think it's a strong possibility. Shop took a major hit. Again, wouldn't be surprised if it comes back down to the 200, waiting till Thursday. Maybe it just trades flat up here till earnings is a strong possibility. I think with e-commerce, it's going to hover more than it moves because we want that first one essentially to come out to see what's going on with the e-commerce space and how much supply is really affecting everything. Because if you realize that it is affecting something like your Amazon or Shopify, it's going to be a major issue. And I think we're going to see a bigger pullback uh, at that point. Are we going to crash? I don't think we're going to crash, but there's going to be some sort of correction, I think, before we start moving forward, going into the holiday season, which again could be a bigger issue, especially with supply chain issues moving forward from that point. NVIDIA, it tried to break. It did get all-time highs, but it looked like it wanted to start getting into that price discovery, but got pulled back pretty quick. Just like the market itself, it tried to get up in that price discovery, new all-time highs, and just got pulled back. That snap news, I think, really hit the market harder than expected. And so it'd be interesting to see what it does. Airbnb is something I want to keep on watch. I'd really like this to come down. I want to build a position in this again. I do like Airbnb. But it's right now it's too high, and it took forever for us to break around that 150 mark. Are we headed down there again? Very much a possibility. I love it back down there though, but we have to see what happens with that. So I want to keep that on watch. Coin is something I definitely want to watch with the movement of Bitcoin. I want to see if this can retrace a little bit further down, especially around that 200, since it had that big move essentially coming out of here when Bitcoin broke all-time highs. I want to see if I wanted to actually come down and retest a lot of these daily supports and grab a position there. And that's what we're not seeing. Like I said, in the market in general, it's pushed so hard that it hasn't come back to retrace any old resistance, which is something we definitely need, especially if you want to start making more new all-time highs with less concern. Wing is something I've been watching. I barely missed this morning, Friday. I wanted to get back into this, and I missed my dip here, especially at 170 pre-market, but this is pushing back up. I think it has earnings in about a week or so, but it's one I want to watch. But yeah, so I definitely want to see how this does. Is it going to retest? I don't think so. I think value is going to take a lot of essentially the money, because banks have been holding very well through this whole thing. So that's something to also watch. Is banks have been doing phenomenal through all this, although they're getting quite high. We have to definitely see they definitely crushed earnings. So with inflation and everything, the inflation stuff I don't think is really starting to affect the market as much. We're going to get data, yes, but it's going to introduce volatility. But I think everybody is aware that the inflation is there, essentially because of the supply issues that we're having because of the pandemic, which has led to inflation and everything else. So that being said, we have to watch and see. Again, I want to keep my eye on earnings and play continuation mostly for this week, I think, is where I'm at. I don't want to jump to conclusions too quick. I want to definitely watch and see where the market wants to go, how the market's going to react. Because again, get a blowout earnings, forward guidance is horrible, and it could sell off. And if that's the case, we might start having bigger issues than we thought. And one thing to keep in mind is Tesla tried to rip extremely hard this morning, and it couldn't get anywhere. So that's also something to keep in mind. But if you've made it this far, remember to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And I will see you guys on the field. Later.